is off. There's some changes. Yes. Yes, go. Okay, thank you. So some of the page numbers. So don't go entirely by that. On page 1, if you want to leaf through it with it, I just give you some sort of introduction, about preparing for the course. Go to page 3. That's where we get fouled up. Go to page 3. It says topic outline, themes, tracing a single theme through the course. The AP, the College Board.
Dawn Vico, please call 5741. Dawn Vico, 5741.
Provides this outline to teachers. And what they say is, okay, look, in preparing students for the course, make sure you adhere to this outline. So one thing you could do is if you go through here and you look at this outline, if you're looking at the topical outline, and you say, okay, French colonization, English colonization, New England servitude and slavery in the Chesapeake region, you read those topics and you say to yourself, well, gee, I don't know much, or I don't remember much about that. You may want to go through and circle the things that you think you need to review, and then go back into the textbook or one of those review books and look at it. But what the AP is arguing is every question they ask, whether it's a multiple choice question or whether it's an essay question, will come out of this outline. So the outline is fairly extensive. If you go, it's page 4, and if you go on page 6, we go through the Great Depression, all the way to page 7. When you get to page 7, it says themes in U.S. history. Now this is a big thing that the AP has done recently. They've talked about these thematic notions that cut across time periods. And they listed, some of the themes if you go to page 8. American diversity, American identity, culture, demographic changes, economic transportation, globalization. These are usually what they draw essays out of. See, one of the things that's different, maybe a little bit when you get onto the AP test than what you might see now, is that sometimes essays will cut across larger time periods. I give you kind of essays and either modify them so they're kind of specific for a time period, but sometimes these themes are, allow essays to cut across a longer time period, 100 years or something. So you might want to take a look at those just to be familiar with it. But what I think is kind of good, if you go to page 10, it says, using these themes, and it picks the theme, I think, of diversity. And what it does is it goes through and it says, with that theme in different time periods, here are potential questions that you should be able to answer. And if you look down where it says American Revolution, how and why did different social, ethnic, and religious groups tend to either join either the revolutionary or the loyalists? Now you may look at that and say, can I respond to this question? Can I respond to this question? Now, the AP is very, very politically correct. They're very politically correct. So when they give you that test, there is going to be questions about ethnic, minorities, racial minorities, gender. They're going to have they're very conscious of that. They're very politically correct. So one of the things that you particularly want to look for when you're looking at this is issues of race, issues of gender, issue of ethnicity. They're going to be conscious of that on the test. So this tracing a theme, I would think about taking a look at that, and seeing how they go all the way up. Right now we're in populism and progressivism, and that's on page 11, and it says, to what degree and what ways are the populists and progressives successful in improving the lives of people between 1890 and 1920? Consider the following groups: women, African American, the urban poor, the rural poor. Well, these are the kind of things that you might see as a free response question on the AP test. Okay, go through the blue pages, and then go to page the first gold page where it says 11. Now again, this is why these are kind of a little bit out of order. What I did starting on page 11 is I divided the course history into what are usually considered to be the typical historical eras. And all I did was leave space. Now the purpose for this is, if you come to the review sessions and you want to take any kind of notations when you come to the review sessions, this is where you would take it. right? So like when we come maybe at the end of today and we start to talk about the colonial period and, things like that, and that's what we want to do next. So, I mean, if you really wanted to do something, when we meet again after the break to start the review on Tuesday, we're going to start with, colonization. If you read through that in whatever review book you have, and then we engage in sort of dialogue about that. So you have read it, we'll have covered it in class, you'll have read it in advance, and then you'll hear it again from me. And then if you take notations when you, study it for the next time, you might be more likely to recall it. So, we go through these and you go to page 13. Right now, we are on page 14, the progressive era in World War I. Hopefully we'll get to 11. I mean, we're going to get to World War II. We're going to talk about the post-war era. We're going to talk about the Cold War. There is a lot of stuff, though, in the modern era that we won't talk about. We'll talk about that a little bit later. These test-taking skills, these are just some things that I found, some suggestions. There's the blue pages through page 18. Just some suggestions on taking tests. I looked for new ones for this year, but didn't find any that I liked. Go to page 19 in the gold. What I did here on page 19 is I took the same historical eras that I identified back there, and then I went through and I looked from the pool of past AP questions, I went through and I looked at a question that was asked either on the free response or the DBQ that would relate to that era. So you say, okay, from the colonial era, what types of questions have they asked in the past? Well, this question here was asked in the past, under the colonial era. For the period before 1750, analyze the ways in which Britain's policy of salutary neglect, Sean Whelan Memorial to Salutary Neglect, influenced the development of American society as illustrated in the following. Legislative assemblies, commerce, and religion. So, in that time period, this is a question that was asked. So you can look at that and say, well, can I respond to that question? The American Revolution. To what extent had the colonists developed a sense of their own identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? Right? Now, these are all questions that were asked on previous AP tests in the past, all through these eras. Right? So, the Gilded Age on there, the Progressive Era. If you go to page 20, where we're at now, assess the relative influence of three of the following in the American decision to declare war on Germany in 1970. And so we haven't gotten that far, before, but that's the type of question. All of these are former test questions. Now go to page 22 in the blue. What I did with page 22 is I took every single president. Right? I took every single president, and I went through and I thought, okay, if you wanted to study something, you could say, okay, I'm going to study the presidents. Right? Beginning with George Washington, his term of office, what I considered to be highlights of his presidency, and then I left room. Right? So you may go through and you may look in your review book and say, okay, there's something else that I want to associate with Washington's administration. I want to add that. Something I would associate with Adams' administration. I want to add that. So you can read this and add things or go over it with, with the book. And this is another way to study. I mean, one of the things that you have to do, and what why I'm trying to give you suggestions is, in theory, some of you actually are going to try to study, right? And so, on some level, all of you are busy. Right? Everybody's busy. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing that. Everyone's busy but me, right? Everyone is busy, right? And so, if you are going to study for an hour or two, you want to get the most you can out of it. You don't want to, what are you going to do? I mean, you have to study the entire course. You're just going to go back and start looking at your notes. What are you going to do? So what I'm saying is you might want to sit down and say, okay, in the time I'm going to study for take right there, my dear track and field friends, take that book. This time I'm going to go through the first 15 presidents or first 10 presidents. They're leaving. They took the book and they're leaving. Right? Now, if you go through those and then go to page 34, it's gold. On that one, what I did there is I took the political parties, the emergence of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and talk about the two-party system And then I have, this comes out of your book actually, this evolution of the parties and this little thing here. And then some